Broncos starters are going to play. Saints starters are going to play. We'll tell you how Denver can make the 2025 Saints outlook miserable in Saturday's preseason finale here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Happy Friday. Welcome into another episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're excited for Denver's preseason finale on Saturday against the New Orleans Saints, and a lot to break down as the preseason finally comes to a close here. We'll break down everything you need to know about Bo Nix and the starting offense, getting some snaps here against the Saints, who are playing their starters as well. We'll also go through the defensive depth and why they have a chance to audition. And part of that, the keys to victory, will lead to the Broncos making the Saints 2025 outlook a little bit miserable going into the season. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there, predominantlyorange.com. Thank you to all the everydayers out there in Broncos country for tuning in and making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. And if you're not yet an everydayer, become one. Hit that subscribe or that follow button so you never miss out on what's going on with your favorite team every single day, all year long. Sayre, my friend, one preseason game remains, and there's some excitement in Broncos country because we know that Bo Nix and the starters are expected to get some snaps against the Saints, who are expected to play a handful of their starters in this game under new head coach Kellen Moore. So a lot to break down as we're going to go through our preview here and our offensive players to watch. I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't open things up with the starters in terms of that. Bo Nix and the Broncos, they're obviously going to get some snaps here. Jaleel McLaughlin should be able to come back and play, obviously, after he and his wife had their first child over the last couple of days. He's expected to play, I think, expected to be a roster lock here. And then I've got Joaquin Davis maybe getting in the mix a little bit, as well as my three players to watch. So Bo Nix, Jaleel McLaughlin, Joaquin Davis. How you feeling about those names?
I like that, Cody. I'll start with Joaquin Davis because I saw your post on Twitter where you talked about if the Broncos keep 6 wide receivers on the 53-man roster, that you and a number of others that are out there at practice every single day, you kind of feel like he might be that guy. So really interested to see what he can do. I know coming out of the draft, when the Broncos signed him, he was one of those guys who was known for his ability to play on special teams. So if that's still continued to be the case as he's transitioned from college to the NFL, then obviously that gives him a really great shot. Love the inclusion of Jaleel McLaughlin as well. I feel like he's a player that, we're kind of looking at in that he's change of pace back, but he can also potentially offer something as a kickoff returner. We haven't seen a ton of kickoff returns for the Broncos this preseason because teams are just not scoring against them. So they're getting like 1 or 2 opportunities a game to showcase, but I think Jaleel is one of those guys that Sean Payton absolutely loves him, right? And so we kind of feel like he is trending towards being a roster lock. And then, of course, Bo Nix, the final tune-up before the regular season, sort of a rare situation here where you are going to see the starters out there for a handful of snaps. At least that's what we understand from what Sean Payton has revealed at this point in time, that he's going to be out there playing 8 to 10 snaps. And because of that, we want to see the starters and Bo Nix in particular end this preseason on a high note. We didn't see you in preseason week 2, and now you got a chance to let everybody go into the regular season with optimism brimming, overflowing. So I like those picks a lot.
The Saints starters on defense are expected to play a little bit as well. So, I mean, there is, I think, some value in the evaluation that we can get from hopefully these 8 to 10 snaps. Hopefully it goes great and they can get off in one series. You march down the field, score, all right. Starters are out. Let's put phase 2 and phase 3 in, and then you don't have to worry about anything there. So you want to see, obviously, these guys stay healthy in that 8 to 10 snap sample size here going forward. Now, obviously, maybe not every starter will play. I think so much for Sean, it's contingent upon health or, hey, there's no need. We already know what we're getting from this guy, but you want to see the offense get into some rhythm, at least maybe for a few plays, and then get off the field here. To go to my point on Joaquin Davis, Sayre, I think the biggest argument for him at this point, and we haven't seen it necessarily in the preseason yet, but we're seeing it every day in practice. Thought he had a nice catch last week, but he's blocking his tail off in the preseason games. He's that sizable wide receiver. Sean Payton has not been shy about saying we prefer size. They just traded away Devon Vele, who was sizable. Joaquin Davis is the next biggest target there. Great, strong hands there. And look, I think that he's got a stronger argument over Courtney Jackson because they're like, well, you need another returner behind Marvin Mims. that's not going to be Courtney Jackson. That's not why you keep him on here at this point. So I think Joaquin Davis will be too talented to try to go through waivers, especially with some of these teams out there that are in need of a wide receiver right now. They will definitely probably try to pluck him away. So those are my players to watch here. Sayre, who are you have your eyes on here this upcoming game against the Saints on Saturday when you look at your offensive players?
Yeah, my 3 offensive players to watch, Cody, are going to be Audric Estime, Caleb Lohner, and then A.T. Perry. I kind of have a question mark for that because I don't know if we are going to see him play. Obviously, starting with Audric Estime, we want to see what he can do with the better offensive lines, right? We've seen him play with the backups to the backups. What can he do with whether it's the starting unit, whether it's the second unit? I want to see what he can do with those guys because ultimately, Cody, I don't think he's really gotten a fair shot in the preseason to showcase himself by playing behind guys who may not even be on your practice squad. And we just saw breaking news from Adam Schefter, Brian Robinson, the Washington Commanders running back. He was traded to the 49ers. So we know that there's other teams out there that are still interested in the running back trade market. I know the Miami Dolphins were one of those teams that was potentially. So if Audric is going to be showcased in this game, actually showcase him, put him up there at the top of the depth chart for this game and let him do what he's best at against the better with the better offensive line. So I think also with A.T. Perry, it's a similar deal with somebody like Joaquin Davis. I know A.T. has been unavailable this offseason, and some of our listeners are kind of split of whether or not we should even be discussing him because he's kind of like the solar eclipse at this point. It's like whenever we see him, crazy ordeal. But I get that. I think it's, why have you held on to him so long anyway at this point? Are you going to try to sneak him onto the practice squad? Do you feel like he could be an option for the 53? And then Caleb Lohner, another guy who's like a lunar eclipse at this point. It's like, when are we going to actually see from him what we hoped to see from him? That's my biggest question with him is like, okay, we've seen how raw you are because you had 3 penalties in the last game, and we haven't seen how awesome you are at catching the ball. So I want to see more of the latter for sure.
And look, I think with A.T. Perry, Broncos fans should be paying attention to him because he did have knee surgery in the offseason. The Broncos followed an extensive plan, and they were being very smart with how they brought him back along. A couple weeks ago, he graduated from team stretch to individual period. This week, he upgraded to participating in team period. So I think we will see our first look at A.T. Perry in a Broncos uniform here and could be one of those players that probably does get slipped through onto the practice squad. I know the Broncos like him a lot. If they didn't, they could have released him. They could have come to terms on an injury settlement for him a long, long time ago. So there is something to be said for why A.T. Perry is still around and in the mix here. We talked about Caleb Lohner as well a little bit earlier in the week about, hey, time's a ticking here for him. It's going to be a big opportunity for him. And I agree with you in your thoughts on Estime. This is the chance for the Broncos and for Sean Payton, really essentially, to showcase him for a potential trade. Kind of what they did with Albert Okwuegbunam a few years ago, where Albert O in that last preseason game just goes off and we're like, all right, the Broncos got to find a way to keep this guy. And it's like, nah, we're trying to trade him. So this is also the game, I think, as you transition away. And maybe Estime gets some touches with the first team offense for this specific reason. Something for us to all keep an eye on here. But if you're not going to have him on your roster, at least showcase him in this game. Get him some downhill touches so you can at least have a chance to have one of these teams pick up the phone and say, hey, we need a running back. What would it take? Because all signs point to Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Bidet, if Denver does keep, in fact, that magic number 4 in terms of the 53-man roster, which the cuts will happen next Tuesday. And there's going to be a lot of news. You have complete coverage over here at Locked On Broncos as well here. But Broncos Country, we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the depth of the defense and why so many of these players have a chance to audition for the 53-man roster against the Saints on Saturday. We'll highlight who those names are and more on today's episode of the show.
This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year, NFL kickoff. It's almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, myself, Cody, we're playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league.
Now's the time to get in on the action. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days. throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the new season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL.
The Denver Broncos are deep defensively, and that depth is going to have a chance to really showcase itself. As we know, the Saints are in the midst of a quarterback battle. They're trying to figure out who's QB1, and if the Broncos can screw that up for them, well, it'll be interesting to see what the fallout is in Denver's favor in terms of those guys that are actively out there trying to wreck the Saints' plans. So Broncos country, we're about to find out. As Gary Kubiak used to say, we're fixing to find out how this defense is going to be comprised in terms of the player personnel this coming season. And as we approach roster cuts, as we approach the final game of the preseason and the excitement of the regular season, man, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss a single episode of Locked On Broncos. Get us at the top of your podcast feed, get us in your YouTube algorithm, all that fun stuff, because we want to be part of your everyday and your passion for the Denver Broncos. We appreciate all of you so much. Cody, let's talk about the defensive players to watch in this game. I really think that offensively, there's a lot of focus, but you have a number of guys on your players here that I think bear monitoring as potential roster candidates here in 2025.
Yeah, look, we're going with the theme of the J names here once again. Jordan Miller, nose tackle, came out of college at SMU here. I feel like he has had a tremendous offseason here for the Broncos. I think one of the things that stands out about Jordan is just his ability to plug inside the A gap. He was on the practice squad for Denver last year. They liked how he was developing all throughout the entire season. I think we've seen his strongest body of work now, specifically in the last game against the Cardinals. If you don't believe me, watch number 90, go back and watch that game, and he'll be a player to watch in this game against the Saints because, with this Saints offense trying to figure out, is it going to be Spencer Rattler? Is it going to be Tyler Shuck? You're going to get a look at the starters here because they are trying to figure out who's going to be in the mixture. We even may see Devon Vele suit up against his former team, but Jordan Miller plug in the run in the A gap against this Saints offensive line is going to be a very big key to watch right here for me, at least when I look at the Broncos defensive line depth. Could he make a potential argument to be one of those final guys on the 53? I mean, when we factor in, you have DJ Jones, Malcolm Roach at this point, it's hard for the Broncos to maybe envision keeping three nose tackles, but if he has too good of a game or is just too much of a clogged player right there, could make things interesting. But there is a chance, I think, that if the Broncos couldn't get him onto the roster, I think he would clear waivers and go to the practice squad here, but they like his ascension, his development. Player number 2 here, we're going to go with Jordan Turner, the inside linebacker that we obviously saw impressed during rookie minicamp on a tryout basis, make it to training camp. Last week, he had 1.5 sacks. I think the Broncos, once again, they want to really figure out what that linebacker depth's going to be like. Obviously, earlier in the week, they released undrafted linebacker J.B. Brown. So really, it's Karene Reed, it's Jordan Turner, practice squad spots on the line, maybe one spot on the 53 from a numbers perspective here as the Broncos have to make some tough decisions next week. Turner is going to be a guy that I have my eye on, especially covering out of the backfield, being sent on a blitz. That's something that Vance Joseph has shown that he feels like he likes doing with him. So that process, I think, will continue to play out. And last but not least, I think we're going to look at cornerback Damarri Mathis. I mean, Sayre, we just talked about showcasing Audric Estime. I think Damarri Mathis will get a lot of run in this game here because the Broncos cornerback depth right now is very top-heavy with Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan, Jahdae Barron, who is going to play in this game despite missing Thursday's practice with the soft tissue injury. And then you factor in Chris Abrams-Drain, 5 corners that can do inside, outside, whereas I think more so Chris Abrams-Drain is probably going to be envisioned as an outside corner. 4 other guys can move inside out if you need them to going forward in terms of flexibility. I just don't see them keeping 6 at this position. And if it was 6, I could see and make a strong case here for Damarri Mathis. But this could very well be a situation where the Broncos showcase him a little bit and potentially trade him before roster cuts happen or right at the deadline. just one of those things you got to look at. Former draft pick, you look at the ties that bind. You're going to be keeping an eye on the Miami Dolphins as a team. You're going to look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles with their ties there, and obviously the New York Jets with Darren Muji. A lot of things to watch for here, but these are my three defensive players that I'm going to have my eye on here in this game. As we talk about your defensive players to watch, I mean, I think this is going to be a very, very crucial stretch here for the Broncos as they try to fill out these depth spots here. You went with a few guys at similar positions that I did. You went D-line, you went linebacker, and then you went outside linebacker here as well. Tell us a little bit more about your three players.
Yeah, we've got Savion Jones on the defensive line to start off. I think he's going to obviously be a roster lock. Broncos traded up into the third round of this year's draft to get Savion Jones, and you just believe that as of right now, he's probably going to be a game day inactive, but man, shoot, I mean, you go out there against the Saints, you have a big game, you might get yourself an active game day role sooner than you think, but it does feel like he's going to be one of those depth pieces that kind of gets put on ice. They'll kind of develop him behind the scenes sort of thing, but this might be our last chance to really see him play extensive snaps, barring injury, for quite some time. And then Karene Reed, I think he could be that fifth linebacker for the team, which means that there's a really good chance that he gets shuffled up off the practice squad at some point in the near future. So we're watching for him on defense. We're watching for him on special teams, we need to see everything from Karene Reed in this game against the New Orleans Saints. And then, of course, Garrett Nelson. Cody, I know that he might have been dealing with some injury type thing or whatever. I know that he's produced, though, when he's been out there on the field. He's been making plays and he's been flashing. Number 59 is what he wears for the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately, not everybody has images in the database because not everybody gets, the spotlight every single week, but he's wearing number 59. So you're watching the game. Watch for number 59 there coming off the edge. I think he could be that top guy on the practice squad, as we believe the Broncos will keep 5 edge players on their 53. But Garrett Nelson, to me, could be that 6th guy, right? So he could be that player that if they have a need, if they have an injury, if something happens to a special teams guy, they could call him up on any given week to come in and play a valuable backup role.
Yeah, and look, I think in a game like this against the Saints, where you really have your starters and most of your backups already solidified on defense, this is a really good problem to have here for Denver. It's just about, okay, who can we add that, could maybe play special teams for us, or could be, someone who's on the 53, but they're part of our game day. We're only allowed to dress so many guys. These guys will be inactive. It allows us to keep these guys here in terms of numbers. And I think when you look at wide receiver where Denver's at, if Denver keeps 6, that, a 6th guy will be inactive more than likely on game days to carry 4 backs. I imagine one of those guys may be inactive. One of the offensive linemen will be inactive. And then, we'll see if they keep 3 quarterbacks. I don't think that's going to be in play for them here. But outside linebacker, for them to already have 5 guys in terms of the 53, and it's kind of as deep as it is with Jonah Ellis, with Dondre Tillman, and obviously Q Robinson, who's been spectacular. You want to be able to have guys that can maybe develop a little bit further. You feel like have some traits that are intangible for, even if it's not this year, maybe a year, maybe 2 years down the line, or if it's just some guy that is going to make your team better because he's just not only just a practice squad player, but a scout team player. Like, that's huge, because I think so many people forget in the regular season, when you have your roster, the practice squad guys, you want to make it up of something that makes sense so that you're not having your starters on one other side of the ball go through scout team reps here. You need a really good look. That's why you fill out your practice squad and you get as much look as you can, because realistically speaking, if it's the Broncos defense that's on the field, it's that second team offensive line going against that starting defense. And then you have Jarrett Stidham at quarterback running the scout team looks there. And then a couple of those other players sprinkled in who play player specific roles. That's what it's all about. And I don't know if anybody talks about that enough, but just maybe some behind the scenes stuff here for Broncos country. Okay, Sayre, so maybe a bold prediction out of the 3 players that you chose defensively, or even mine. You can look at all of them, because we'll go back and we'll revisit mine. I had Jordan Miller, Jordan Turner, Damarri Mathis. You had Savion Jones, Karene Reed, and Garrett Nelson. Out of those 6 names, give us one bold prediction for one of those players. Who is it and what is it?
Well, let's say Corene Reed caps off the preseason with a big play, maybe a strip sack that results in a huge turnover for the Denver Broncos. I'm going to say a big play, a memorable play from Corene Reed that gets everybody talking about him. I think he's going to be that guy in this game, Cody, who really steps up. Maybe he picks off the Spencer Rattler in the, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think Corene Reed's going to make a game-changing play here in this game.
All righty, Broncos Country, you heard Sayre there. Make sure you drop your players to watch defensively here in Saturday's preseason finale against the New Orleans Saints. We're not done yet, though. Broncos Country coming up next. Sayre and I, we're going to talk about whether the Broncos, whether it's the Phase 2 or Phase 3 players, need to make the Saints' 2025 outlook miserable in this game. We'll go through keys to victory and more here on today's episode of the show.
Today's episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, feels like there's advice for everything. Cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes, but how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and wellness, it can be overwhelming to try to figure out what's true and what will actually help. And that's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all the difference. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something that you saw on social media.
Well, the one thing I like about therapy is that life doesn't come with a manual, but you can find things out about yourself that can help you deal with some of life's most stressful moments, or even if you're just trying to connect with yourself on a deeper level. That's where therapy can come in handy, and BetterHelp is the perfect place to be, because with over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, serving more than 5 million people. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The 2025 New Orleans Saints, they're looking to figure out who their quarterback is going to be for this season. But for the Broncos, they got to come in and make the entire outlook of their upcoming season in New Orleans look awful. That's what the Broncos have to do in this game here as we dive deeper into our keys to victory. Real quick, once again, thank you so much to everyone in Broncos Country, all the everydayers, for tuning in, making us your first listen. We appreciate you so much for rocking with us. Make sure you engage with us on social media at Locked On Broncos. We're also on TikTok for short form content. You want all that stuff there, make sure you go follow us there at Locked On Broncos. But going into our keys to victory, Sayre, I mean, these are things that we want to see happen here. Obviously, we want the Broncos to win. More importantly, we want the Broncos to come away from this game healthy. Everybody, guys who have big ambitions to make this roster. You want to see a highly competitive football game, but you also want to see the Broncos kind of dominate and shut the door on the Saints 2025 season outlook, because with their starters playing and them trying to figure out who their QB is, this is the perfect opportunity to make the Saints feel like they're hopeless, in a sense, like we don't believe we have a quarterback of the future on our team. And the Broncos just showed us that. Let's get into our keys to victory, Sayre. Where are you leaning here? What are your 3 keys?
Yeah, my 3 keys to victory here for the Broncos. Number 1, create turnovers. Number 2, dominate on the ground. And number 3, big special teams plays. And I think that is all encompassing, right? Returns. You want to see Jeremy Crawshaw booming the ball out there. You want to see this team maybe go block a punt or something, just dominate in every phase of the game, right? So I think now the Broncos have a vested interest, or like a significant interest, in the Saints being bad, because they now have that 4th round pick in next year's draft. And if that ends up being the top pick of day 3, that can be super valuable, not because the Broncos could then sleep on, hey, who's our best player on the board, but they could also potentially trade that pick for a future 3rd round pick, because teams will do that at times. They'll trade valuable future draft capital. So you have a significant interest now in the Saints being bad. And yes, this game doesn't necessarily put them in the bad category, but I think you can kind of make them feel like, shoot, yeah, this is a rebuilding year. Creating turnovers is always a must. I think we saw that in week 1 of the preseason, right, Cody? Week 2, didn't see as much of the turnovers, saw even more defensive dominance, though. I mean, I think the Cardinals had like 135 yards of offense or something, but let's turn that dominance into creating turnovers. And then the ground game, it helps everybody. If the Broncos run the ball well, shoot, it gives a good outlook for them, and it also potentially helps them trade a guy away. And then big special teams plays. I don't know. I don't want to be underwhelmed again by Jeremy Crawshaw's performance. I want to see a big performance from him, and I want to see somebody return something. Let's see. I want a preseason punt return touchdown or kick return touchdown. Like, that's what I want to see, Cody. That's the fireworks that I want in the preseason.
Well, to go to your second key to victory about dominate on the ground, I mean, 2 consecutive games to open up the preseason, the Broncos have had over 25 plus rushing yards there. I mean, we talked about the offensive onslaught last week of what was it, 560 something yards of offense. That is what you talk about, dominate the time of possession, have a smothering defense, control the ball by, running the ball effectively. I think Denver's stable of backs that they've had so far through 2 weeks of preseason, that's been a huge positive for them, though I think we've really kind of had clarity on who the final two will be behind RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. I'm with you there. I would also like to see a big special teams plays, right? Special teams, special players. You want to see someone on the gunner go down there and blow up the punt returner, maybe force a fumble, right? And that all accounts to good hang time from Jeremy Crawshaw, more consistency. I think those are good keys to victory here, my friend. I'm going to go into mine now. First key to victory here is efficient operation of offense with the starters in. Now, look, you're not going to have like the chance to, I don't think the Broncos playing 8 to 10 snaps is going to mean like if they go on and score a touchdown right away, all right, the Broncos are going to win this game because their starter scored. But no, you want to see, I think, just from a standpoint of the first team offense going in there, clean operation, especially when you're playing against that Saints starting defense that still has some very talented players. I don't know if Cam Jordan's going to play, but if the starter's going to play, he's one of them. I would probably expect him to play at this point going forward. You just want to see a clean, efficient operation of the offensive system. And also, I'd say even for the defensive side, too, that's going to apply there. My second key is going to be pressure Spencer Rattler and make the Saints dread 2025. The Broncos last year, they sent pressure left and right after Spencer Rattler on Thursday Night Football. He's battling for a starting job here this upcoming season. And so, he's going to have some crispness to him just because he's already had a year of NFL experience, where some of these guys he's going against probably don't have a lot of vast experience. But if the Broncos can make his life miserable despite that, I think that would really kind of just pour rain all over the New Orleans Saints outlook for the upcoming season, just because they want to figure out if one of these guys that they drafted is a franchise quarterback. I personally don't believe either of them are. I don't think that guy's even on that roster. So we'll see what the Saints plan is later. For you, more Saints information, you can go check our friend Ross Jackson over there, Locked On Saints. Key number 3, third down dominance on the defensive side of the ball here. Once again, the Broncos defense has been smothering on third down. 3 of 25. That's 12% efficiency on third down. And when you think about it, you go to that first game against San Francisco, that was a 50-yard play that was given up. That's one of those third down allowed conversions there. Then they scored on third down in the run game in that red zone. So there's 2. And then the touchdown that the Cardinals had last week, the only one of the game, came on third down. So when you think about it, there's only 3 plays this season in the preseason where the Broncos have allowed a third down conversion. And I think 2 of them were for score. So that's obviously an area you want to brush up in the goal line in the red zone. But can the Broncos just continue to just send pressure after these quarterbacks? I think the Vance Joseph will. We saw it last week, and it's a perfect opportunity for these guys to make their mark, to make the best last impression possible before roster cuts.
Yeah, I love these keys to victory, Cody. And I would say, to piggyback off your first point here, efficient operation of the offense with the starters. And I think that's not only key to victory in this game, but it's going to be key for if Bo Nix goes out there and gets hit a couple of times, or if the running game is getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, I mean, like, that's not what we want to see. We want to see, and not that they have to go out there and score in 5 plays against. That would be nice to see them go score in 5 plays against the Saints defense and have just one. Or just one. Yeah, just one and done. Get them out of there. But like, I don't want to see Bo Nix getting hit. I don't want to see the offensive line getting whooped up on. I don't want to see tackles behind the line of scrimmage. I don't want to see dropped passes. I don't want to see any of that crap, because I'm sick of that stuff. Like, from the first week of the preseason, I know we're being harsh, and I know that is preseason, but at the same time, when you get into a game situation, like, your $92 million receiver has to make a catch on a perfect throw from the quarterback. And then your quarterback can't throw the ball away when there's a corner bearing down on him for a safety. I mean, those are game situations. I know you're avoiding getting hit and stuff, but now this is your final dress rehearsal. You want to feel good about what you're going into the season with. This is those guys' opportunity, in my opinion, for a little bit of redemption after that first preseason game. I know they played well in the joint practice. I know they did well in training camp. I know the offense has been better lately. Let's see it in a game setting.
Yeah, and it's going to prepare you for your week 1 matchup. We're going to have, you're going to have to go against the big guy Sweat on the D-line of the Titans, Jeffrey Simmons, former Bronco Draymond Jones. I mean, they're going to bring some heat here in week one of the regular season. They're going to try to at Bo Nix and the Broncos. So they're going to have to, you don't want to go into week one with like, okay, we didn't have the best showing here. But Quinn Miners did say something good when I asked him a question about getting more reps and getting more snaps since that first preseason game. He said, we just want to be as prepared as possible here for week one. He said, I want to play in the preseason because then week one, I'm not going out there and I'm not having to make adjustments because I hadn't gotten any snaps in the preseason. I get the game feel and I can go through and look at my game. We can go through collectively as a unit and we can make some tweaks here and there to better prepare ourselves. So I think there's going to be a lot of value in this. And we're all fixing to find out. 11 a.m. Mountain Time kickoff on Saturday morning, Broncos Country. Don't miss out on it. And then after the game, you can get post-game coverage here, courtesy of Sayre Bedinger, myself here, Locked On Broncos post-game report. And then it gets to the roster cuts where Sayre and I will start to predict the 53-man roster. So a lot to look forward to in the next coming days here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. Thanks for listening, Broncos Country. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out our friends over there, Locked On Fantasy Football. We'll see you tomorrow after the game for the Locked On Broncos post-game report.